The majority of new innovation in the United States comes from small businesses. The Small Business Administration says more than 26 million people in the United States are self-employed. But the American dream of owning your own business sometimes generates nightmares. Over a third of small businesses fail in the first 24 months, and more than half dissolve by the end of their fourth year. So when your business runs into trouble, how do you turn it around? We're joined now by Herb Kay, an entrepreneur himself and president of Tucson-based HK Turnaround. Herb, nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Dana.
What basic principal factors cause most businesses to fail in those first 24 months?
You know, it's not that simple. It's usually a lot of decisions that kind of build up over time. But if I had to make one broad generalization, I would say is I've never seen anyone actually have a business plan that started a business. They think they do. They have like a little executive summary where they set out their hopes and their dreams, and they have rudimentary numbers which they think are based on realistic scenarios, but they normally isn't based on anything at all other than hopes and dreams. And they find out that reality is much, much different than what they envisioned.
You went bankrupt at the tender age of 22. What did that experience do to you, and what did it do for you?
It was my PhD in business. It taught me what I don't want to do again, although I've had several near-death experiences business-wise since. That's really how I got into this to begin with. But it also taught me it's not the worst thing that ever happened. And sometimes the best thing is to drop back 10 and punt. You know, we're going into a very difficult economic cycle right now. It's going to get much, much worse, I think. And you've known me a long time, Dana. I'm normally Joe Happy. I mean, for me to tell you that I think we're facing a serious recession is, I don't think you've probably ever known me to say something like that.
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard you say that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real bad one. And so the time is now for businesses to plan. It's stressful enough in good times. Those statistics you gave were good time statistics. We're about to enter a much more negative period, and that's why it's so important for them to get down to business.
How did you get into this business of turnaround businesses?
Because I was involved in a very, very difficult business myself. It was real estate development related. It had some cross-border elements. There were 7 companies involved. It was near cataclysmic, but I stepped into it and was able to turn the whole thing around and work it out. And when it was all over, the attorneys and accountants involved sat down with me and said, you know, you must be the coolest cucumber we've ever seen in bad situations. You really should do this for a living, and that's where the idea was born.
When a business owner comes to you and says, I need some help in turning my business around, what are the first things that you look at? What are the first things you look for?
The first things we look at is viability. I mean, should they really continue? Is what's causing the business to fail something that they've done, in which case we can generally fix it? Or is it something that's an external force? For example, Tucson is a very real estate-centric economy. First Magnus probably couldn't have been saved. Now there were a lot of decisions along the way that probably led to that ultimately, but that's a good example of a company that probably could not have been saved. And sometimes external situations are so severe that you should really think about dropping back 10 and punting and living to fight another day, as I did when I went bankrupt at a tender young age. And so that's the first thing we look at. Should we even save this?
Right. A lot of business owners, when they get to that point where they're struggling, think that an infusion of capital will kind of help save the day. How often is that the principal issue? How often is that true?
It's always an issue. It's always true, but it's always ancillary to the central causes. You know, we're doing downloadable webcasts on the hkturnaround.com website where we're teaching people how to raise money into a troubled business, which is possible. And it's troubled can mean anything, from just a little bit of trouble to you're really in trouble. It is possible to raise money, and you should do it as quickly as possible. But it comes together with other moving parts, and it's not going to be the only problem. To raise more money, to band-aid a bleeding situation, is not smart. You've got to get time, the bleeding under control, the systems and operations in place to spend the money wisely, raise the capital, move forward, and succeed. And then you can succeed, and money is, of course, central to it.
Entrepreneurs have a certain amount of intelligence, a certain amount of pride, a certain amount of drive. How tough is it for somebody who had the guts and determination to start a business to essentially raise their hand and say, things aren't going so well, I need help?
Really hard, because who are you going to talk to? You know, you don't talk to your spouse because you don't want to worry them. You don't talk to your friends because you're embarrassed that they're going to find out that you're in trouble. You get the feeling that it's just you. You know, for me, and I think you've probably experienced this too because you've been in business for years yourself, 2 o'clock in the morning is the worst time of the day, where you wake up in the middle of the night and you're going, oh, what am I going to do? And there's no one to call and no one to talk to. It is hard. Plus, entrepreneurs, they started the business, they took the risk, they understand it, it's their baby. It's very, very, very hard to turn to someone else and say, come and help me. But that's why we have 2 resources available through our company, either direct, hands-on consultation, or the downloadable resources for those people that just can't do it themselves. They prefer to do it themselves. They can't give over control to somebody else.
Right. Well, thanks for joining us and telling us about your new venture, Herb. We wish you the best of luck with it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
It's really great to be here.